Pushpin disclaimer. This story is a work of fiction. All names, characters, places, and incidents are purely the product of the author's imagination. Any resemblance to actual events, real people, or real places is purely coincidental. This story is intended for entertainment purposes only and may contain suspenseful or unsettling themes that may not be suitable for all audiences. Reader discretion is advised. It was the kind of house people dreamed of. A two-story colonial revival with a wraparound porch, nestled at the edge of a quiet suburban neighborhood in upstate New York. Surrounded by maple trees and set slightly back from the road, the old house had stood there for over a century, with chipped white paint and a slightly crooked weather vane that only added to its charm. For Emma and Jake Collins, it was everything they had hoped for. They'd been searching for months for a fixer-upper with character, and this house, though old and in need of repairs, had a certain charm that made them fall in love instantly. The previous owner, an elderly woman, had passed away a year ago, and the property had gone untouched since. "This place has good bones," Jake had said as they walked through the creaking hallway during their first visit. Emma smiled as she ran her hand along the old wood railing. "It feels like it's hiding stories," she whispered. They moved in mid-September. The leaves were turning gold and orange, giving the yard a warm, glowing feel in the evening sun. The couple spent their days unpacking boxes, scrubbing years of dust off windowsills, and making plans for future renovations. Their neighbors were polite but strangely reserved. Most gave them friendly nods and brief greetings, but few engaged in real conversation. The couple living directly next door, Mr. and Mrs. Harper, had lived there for over 30 years. During a brief conversation, Mrs. Harper hesitated when Emma asked about the previous owners. "Oh, the house has history," she said cautiously. "Old homes like that, they keep memories. Just be respectful of what came before." She smiled tightly and changed the subject. Emma was intrigued but brushed it off. Probably just the kind of cryptic thing old neighbors say when you buy a creaky antique house. But something felt off. About a week after moving in, Emma noticed something strange while she was vacuuming the upstairs hallway. The second floor had 3 bedrooms and one oddly narrow corridor that led to a dead end and a small linen closet. As she passed the corridor, she stopped and looked around. She had been studying the blueprints they got during the sale, and something wasn't adding up. The house was supposed to be symmetrical, but this hallway felt like it was taking up more space than it should. There should have been another window along the back wall, but there wasn't, just a large, blank stretch of wallpapered wall. She told Jake about it that night. He shrugged. Probably just old construction. Things didn't always follow modern layout logic. Still, it bugged her. Over the next few days, she measured the walls and floor space. Her suspicions grew. There was at least 6 feet of space unaccounted for behind that blank wall. Jake joked, "Maybe we've got a secret wine cellar. Or treasure." But when Emma pressed her ear to the wall one evening, she didn't hear silence. She heard something. A faint shuffling. Like the soft drag of something moving slowly. At first, she thought it was mice in the walls. But the sound wasn't coming from below, it was at ear level, like someone or something was moving just on the other side. She stepped back. The wallpaper was faded and peeling near the baseboard. She crouched and tugged gently at a corner. The old paper peeled back with surprising ease, revealing a layer of rough, darkened plaster beneath. There, faint but undeniable, was a rectangular outline. A door frame. Hidden. Emma's stomach dropped. Her breath caught. Behind the wall, there was a room. Emma couldn't stop staring at the faint outline in the plaster. It was a perfect rectangle, taller than her, with a slight indentation along the right side, just where a doorknob might have been. Her heart pounded as she traced her fingers along the edge. She called Jake upstairs. At first, he laughed. "No way. It's probably an old doorway they covered up. Maybe they remodeled and forgot to update the blueprints." But when he got a closer look, his expression changed. "This doesn't look patched from a remodel. It looks sealed." That night, they barely slept. Questions ran through their minds. Who sealed the room? Why? Was it just storage? Or something worse? Emma kept thinking about the sound she heard, that slow, dragging shuffle. Could it have just been her imagination? The next morning, they decided to investigate. Jake brought his toolbox while Emma cleared away the rest of the wallpaper. With each peeled strip, the shape of the hidden door became more visible. No knob, no hinges, just a frame covered in old, brittle plaster. Jake carefully tapped a hammer against it. "Hollow." He exchanged a glance with Emma. "Here goes nothing." He began chiseling away at the wall bit by bit. The plaster crumbled easily, almost like it was eager to be removed. Within an hour, they had uncovered an entire doorway. Emma stepped back nervously. What if this was sealed for a reason? Jake looked at her, hesitating for a moment. We've come this far. He pried the final wooden panel loose and pushed it open. A gust of cold, stale air rushed out. It smelled like mildew, dust, and something else, something metallic. Like old blood. They aimed a flashlight into the room. It was small, maybe 8 feet by 10. No windows. The walls were covered in peeling wallpaper, printed with faded floral patterns. A small wooden bed sat in the corner, its mattress blackened with age. There was a child's dresser against the wall, its drawers slightly open. Toys lay scattered across the floor. A headless doll, a wooden train, a rusted metal car. Everything was coated in thick layers of dust, as if time itself had forgotten this place. Emma stepped inside first. The floor creaked under her feet. Felt like entering a tomb. Everything was still, but the air was heavy, like the room had been waiting for someone to come back. She crouched down by the dresser and opened the top drawer. Inside was a small notebook, faded pink with a broken spine. She opened it carefully. A child's handwriting filled the pages. September 3rd. Mommy said I have to stay in here now. She says the house isn't safe anymore. September 5th. I hear footsteps when no one is there. I don't think it's Mommy. September 9th. The dark thing is watching me again. Emma's hand trembled. She turned the pages slowly, the writing becoming more frantic, the lines messier. It whispers at night. It wants me to play. I don't want to play. I told Mommy, but she just cried. She said I have to be brave. Why won't anyone open the door? The last page was stained and almost unreadable. I think it's inside now. It doesn't need the door anymore. Emma closed the diary and looked around the room. There were no signs of struggle, no blood, no damage, just the unbearable feeling of loneliness. Jake was standing in the doorway, his face pale. This wasn't just sealed off. It was buried. Emma nodded slowly. Someone left a child in here. They stepped out of the room and sat silently in the hallway for a long time. The house no longer felt welcoming. The charm was gone, replaced by something colder, something hiding just out of sight. That night, as Emma lay in bed staring at the ceiling, she heard the shuffle again. Only this time it wasn't coming from behind the wall. It was coming from the hallway. The next morning brought little comfort. The house, usually filled with golden sunlight through the old windows, felt dimmer, colder. Even with every light on, shadows seemed to stretch too far, creeping along the baseboards and pooling in the corners. Emma and Jake tried to go about their day as if everything were normal, but the sealed room behind the wall had changed something. Emma found herself standing in the doorway of the hidden room again. She had brought a dust mask, gloves, and a flashlight this time. It wasn't just curiosity anymore. It was a need to understand what happened. Who was the child in the diary? Why was the room sealed so completely? She stepped inside and began carefully examining every corner. The bed's wooden frame creaked slightly as she touched it. On the wall just above it, hidden beneath a peeling layer of wallpaper, was something faint, scratches. Dozens of short lines, grouped in sets of 5. Emma leaned closer. They were tally marks. Someone had been counting days. She stopped counting at 70. Nearby, the child's toy box sat open. Inside were a few ragged dolls, puzzle pieces, and a small wooden soldier with one eye missing. At the bottom, tucked under a blanket, was a photograph faded and yellowed. A woman, a man, and a little boy no older than 6. They were standing in front of the house. The woman's eyes looked tired, the boy's expression unreadable. Written on the back in elegant cursive, "Our home, 1962. Gregory's 6th birthday." Emma stared at the name. Gregory. She pulled the diary out again and flipped through the entries. On one of the earlier pages, the boy had written, "Gregory's room," in large, clumsy letters. Her stomach twisted. This wasn't just a forgotten guest room. This was Gregory's prison. She showed the photo and diary to Jake, who was now thoroughly unnerved. "Why would anyone lock a child in a room like that?" he asked. "I don't think they meant to," Emma said quietly. "I think they were trying to protect him from something." That night they tried to sleep, but the noises returned. First soft tapping, then whispers, low and indecipherable. Jake thought it was the pipes at first, but the whispers grew louder, forming shapes. Words. "Play with me." The voice was childlike, but something about it felt wrong. Too cold. Too deliberate. Emma sat up, heart racing. The hallway was dark, but she could see a faint light coming from the hidden room. They hadn't turned on any lights. She woke Jake. The room. The light. They crept out of the bedroom together and approached the hallway. The light flickered slightly like a candle or a dying bulb, but there were no lamps in the hidden room. No power outlets either. As they approached the open doorway, the light suddenly went out, plunging the hallway into darkness. Then came the sound, a slow, dragging noise across the wooden floor, like someone pulling a chair or crawling. Jake turned on the flashlight. The room was empty, but there on the child's bed was something that hadn't been there before. A new drawing laid out perfectly flat. Crayon on aged paper. A figure drawn in black, tall and spindly with long fingers and hollow eyes. It stood next to a small child with an X over his face. Jake didn't speak. He just stepped back. Emma picked up the drawing with trembling hands. At the bottom, written in shaky crayon, "He lives in the dark. He wants to be free." They left the room and closed the door, or what was left of it. Jake nailed a board across it, almost in a panic. But the damage was done. Something had noticed them, and it was no longer just watching from behind the wall. The days that followed were anything but normal. Whatever peace Emma and Jake had once felt in the house had fully unraveled. The presence, whatever it was, had awakened. It started subtly. Lights flickering. Doors creaking open just after being closed. The sound of footsteps in the middle of the night when no one else was awake. Jake tried to stay logical, brushing it off as the result of opening an old, sealed space after decades. "We probably stirred up mold or something," he told Emma. "This house is old. It's settling." But Emma wasn't so sure. She knew what she had heard. The whispers at night weren't the house settling, they were speaking. Faint, breathy voices repeating the same phrase over and over. "He's coming." One night, around 3 a.m., Emma awoke to a sharp sound like fingernails tapping against glass. Her eyes darted to the bedroom window. Nothing. Then she heard it again. But this time it wasn't from outside. It was coming from the hallway. Jake was still asleep. Emma, heart pounding, slid out of bed and grabbed her phone for light. As she crept into the hallway, the tapping stopped. Silence. Then, without warning, she heard a whisper right behind her ear. "Gregory wants to play." She spun around. No one was there. She dropped her phone. The flashlight flicked on briefly before going black. When she picked it up again, the hallway was empty, but she felt something brush past her. Something cold. The next day, Jake finally admitted it. "I've been hearing things too," he said quietly. "I heard someone crying. A child. Last night in the basement. But there's no one down there," Emma said. "I know." They started documenting the events, strange noises, missing objects, drawings that appeared in random places. Emma found a small handprint on the bathroom mirror, even though neither of them had touched it. Jake woke up once to find deep scratches along the wood floor as if something had been crawling on its hands and knees. Their dog, Buster, who had always been playful and calm, now refused to go near the hallway where the hidden room was. He growled at shadows. One night, he stood outside the room, barking and whining until his voice went hoarse. Then came the dreams. Emma dreamed of the room, but it wasn't abandoned. In her dream, it was alive, pulsing with darkness. She saw Gregory standing in the corner, eyes wide with terror. His lips were moving, but she couldn't hear what he was saying. Behind him stood a tall figure, draped in shadows. It had no face, only darkness where its features should be. And it watched her as if it knew she could see it. Jake had dreams too, though he didn't tell Emma the full details. He woke up drenched in sweat, gasping for breath, swearing he felt hands grabbing him in his sleep. But he didn't want to scare her more than she already was. Finally, Emma made a decision. "I think we need help," she said. "Someone who understands this stuff." Jake hesitated. "You mean like a psychic?" Emma nodded. "We need answers. I don't think this is just a ghost. I think we let something out." Jake agreed. That evening, as they sat in the living room researching local paranormal experts, the power flickered, then went out completely. The house fell into darkness. The only sound was the wind outside and a soft, rhythmic thumping from the upstairs hallway. Jake grabbed a flashlight. Emma followed, holding his arm tightly. They reached the hallway and froze. The door to the hidden room, the one Jake had boarded shut, was wide open. And on the wall beside it, written in what looked like black charcoal or ash, was a chilling message. "You found me. Now I'll find you." After the message appeared on the wall and the boarded-up door swung open by itself, Jake and Emma knew this wasn't something they could ignore any longer. The fear had taken root in both of them, and the house, once full of promise, had become a place of dread. The next morning, they didn't even eat breakfast. Emma packed her laptop and they drove to the local historical society in town, a small brick building tucked behind the library. If the house held dark secrets, this was the place to find them. They were greeted by an older woman named Margaret, the society's unofficial historian. She seemed polite, if slightly puzzled, when Emma asked, "Do you have any records on the house at 112 Grayson Lane?" Margaret's demeanor changed almost immediately. Her hands froze above the old ledger. "That house again?" Emma and Jake exchanged a look. "You're not the first ones to come asking," Margaret continued. "A few years ago, a woman came by. She only stayed there a few months before selling. And before her, there was a couple. They left in the middle of the night. Never came back for their furniture." Emma felt a chill crawl down her spine. "Why? What happened?" Margaret hesitated, then led them into the back, where stacks of property records, newspaper archives, and microfilm sat waiting. "There's a box labeled Grayson Lane. You might want to start there." They found newspaper clippings going back to the 1950s. The house had once belonged to a man named Thomas Wexley, a reclusive woodworker who lived with his wife, Clara, and their only son, Gregory Wexley. Emma pulled out a yellowed article dated October 1963. Local boy, Gregory Wexley, declared missing after neighbors reported screams and banging coming from the Wexley residence. No official charges filed. Family moved shortly afterward. Police investigation stalled. Jake read it aloud. He didn't run away. He was declared missing, but there's no record of the parents ever searching. Emma's voice cracked. They sealed him in. Alive. A few pages later, they found more troubling details. Clara Wexley had written letters to the local priest and even to the county board, begging for help. In one letter, she wrote, "There is something wrong with Gregory. He says he hears voices at night, that something wants to play with him. He draws things no child should draw. He doesn't sleep. His eyes are wrong now. Please, someone help us." Another document caught Jake's eye, a report from a visiting doctor sent by Child Welfare Services. Patient shows signs of extreme paranoia and disassociation. Claims to see a figure in the walls. Mother insists child is marked. Recommends psychiatric evaluation, but mother refuses further visits. Then, near the bottom of the box, they found the old floor plan of the house, original construction sketches from 1912. And just as Emma had suspected when they first moved in, the upstairs had 4 rooms, not 3. But the 4th room was labeled Gregory's quarters. There was a note scribbled beside it, barely legible, "Do not open once sealed. Lock remains until bloodline ends." Jake frowned. "Bloodline? What does that mean?" Emma whispered, "Maybe it wasn't just the boy. Maybe it was passed down." They left the historical society with copies of everything they could take. On the way home, the world outside seemed duller, like the color had been sucked from it. As they approached their house, Buster began barking wildly from inside. They rushed to the door, only to find it slightly ajar. Jake had locked it before they left. Inside, nothing was missing, but the house had changed. The air was thicker, the lights dimmer, the shadows darker. And in the hallway, just outside the sealed room, another message had appeared, this time written in red, like rust or old blood. "I know you remember me now. I remember you too." Emma dropped the papers she was holding. The name Wexley burned in her mind. She suddenly realized what the scribbled note on the blueprint might have meant. That whatever had possessed Gregory might not be done. It might be looking for someone new. The walls were closing in, not physically but mentally. The house felt tighter each day, like it was slowly wrapping itself around Jake and Emma, suffocating them with shadows, silence, and dread. After their visit to the historical society, Emma couldn't stop thinking about Gregory's bloodline and what the note meant about it needing to end. She started to question everything. What if Gregory hadn't been the first? What if the house, or whatever was in it, was tied to something older? But even more frightening, what if she was connected to it? She called her mother that evening and casually asked about any family ties to the Wexley name. Her mother paused. "Wexley? That's your great-grandmother's maiden name. Why?" Emma nearly dropped the phone. So that was it. The entity wasn't just haunting them by chance. It had been waiting for her. In the days that followed, Jake began to change. He was quieter, more irritable. He would stare into empty rooms, unmoving, for minutes at a time. Emma once caught him just sitting on the edge of the bed in the middle of the night, whispering something to himself. "What are you saying?" she asked softly. He turned to her, eyes blank. "I'm listening." "To what?" Jake blinked. Confusion passed across his face like a cloud. I don't know. She started keeping a journal, documenting everything, the noises, the drawings, the dreams, and now Jake's behavior. On one page she wrote, he's slipping away from me. Slowly. I think it's using him. Jake started having blackouts. He'd lose time hours at a time. Once he woke up in the backyard with no memory of going outside. Another time, Emma found him standing in the hidden room, barefoot, just staring at the wall with the child's tally marks. When she asked what he was doing, he only said, I needed to count. I forgot how long I've been here. It wasn't just Jake. Emma began to feel things, too. She'd hear laughter when she was alone. She'd turn and see figures just outside her peripheral vision. And sometimes she'd wake up with bruises, small ones, around her wrists or ankles as if something had grabbed her while she slept. One night, Emma woke to the sound of scratching. It was coming from the wall, inside the wall. She pressed her ear to it and heard something that made her blood freeze. Emma. Emma. I'm coming. She screamed and ran to wake Jake. But he was already awake, standing in the hallway, staring at the hidden room. The door was open again. I saw him, Jake said. Gregory. But it wasn't him anymore. It was wearing his face. That's when they called the paranormal investigator. Her name was Dana Rhodes, a well-known medium with experience in ancestral hauntings. When she entered the house, her face paled instantly. She stood in the entryway and whispered, this place is sick. There's something buried here. They showed her the hidden room. She wouldn't step inside. Instead, she walked slowly around the hallway, eyes closed, muttering prayers. There's a child, she said. His pain is deep, but something else latched onto him. Something ancient. It used his fear to grow. He was the seed. Jake's voice was tight. Can we get rid of it? Dana opened her eyes. Not easily. You didn't just wake it, you invited it. It sees you as part of its story now. Especially you, Emma. Emma's hands trembled. Because of my bloodline? Dana nodded grimly. It's feeding on the unfinished, the fear, the pain, the betrayal. And if it takes root in someone again, it could become permanent. That night, Dana stayed in the house. She placed symbols and salt lines, chanted protective prayers, and sat in vigil outside the hidden room. But at 3:33 a.m., Emma awoke to find the salt lines disturbed. The floor was cold. The drawings on the hallway wall had changed. Now there were two figures. Jake and Emma, both with excess over their faces. The house was beyond saving. Dana confirmed it the next morning. It's not just haunted. This place is possessed not by a ghost, but by something that uses human emotion like oxygen. It needs trauma. It needs memory. Emma and Jake were pale, exhausted, barely speaking. The night before had been the worst yet. The drawings on the wall now showed not just excess over their faces, but lines leading from their heads to the dark figure in the corner as if feeding it. It's choosing one of you, Dana warned. Maybe both. But one of you is the easier target. Jake looked hollow. I think it's me. I'm starting to like it when the house is quiet like that. When the voices come, I don't feel scared anymore. I feel welcome. Emma grabbed his hand. You can fight this. We can fight it. But Dana was firm. You opened something sealed for a reason. You can't just board it back up. You have to finish it. That night, Dana prepared a ritual, a confrontation of spirit and will. They would go into the room, not to cleanse it, but to face it, force it into form, and give it a name. Because once it had a name, it could be separated. Bound. It was dangerous. If they weren't careful, it would latch onto one of them permanently. They entered the hidden room at midnight. Jake and Emma sat in a protective circle of salt and sage, candles flickering against the faded wallpaper. Dana began chanting in Latin, her voice steady but urgent. The room pulsed. The air became heavy. Cold. The shadows thickened. And then, slowly, something began to form. At first, it was just smoke, dark and swirling. But then it took shape. A child, thin and pale, standing barefoot in the corner. His head tilted to the side, eyes empty. Gregory, Emma whispered. But Dana stopped her. That's not him. That's what's using him. The figure twitched, and suddenly its arms grew long, unnatural. Its fingers sharpened into points. Its mouth stretched wider than a child's should. And from that black mouth came a voice that wasn't a boy's. It spoke in 1,000 whispers at once. She left me here. He let me starve. You opened the door. Now I'll wear you. Jake clutched his head, groaning. The thing was inside him again, pushing, clawing. Dana shouted the spirit's name, the one she had sensed through ritual and research, Afinar. The entity shrieked. The room exploded in pressure. The wallpaper peeled, the walls cracked, and the candles blew out all at once. But the salt circle remained unbroken. Emma gripped Jake's shoulders. "Fight it. Don't let it in. It's not you, Jake." But he wasn't responding. His eyes were rolled back. His mouth opened and that same voice poured from him. "It's already done." Emma screamed and slapped him hard. Jake gasped. His body convulsed, and for a moment he was back. Tears streamed down his face. "I saw him," Jake said, trembling. "Gregory. The real one. He's still in there. Trapped." Dana's hands trembled as she finished the incantation. "Then we need to let him go." Emma turned to the thing in the corner. "Gregory, if you're in there, you can stop this. You don't have to listen to it anymore." The shadow twitched. For a flicker of a second, the monstrous figure shrank. Became smaller. Rounder. Childlike. Then it screamed. A bone-rattling, piercing cry. The air snapped, and the thing collapsed into ash. The room was suddenly dead silent. Emma looked around. The wallpaper hung loose, scorched. The drawings had vanished. The bed frame had turned to dust. And the air, for the first time in weeks, felt still. Jake fell into Emma's arms, sobbing. "It's gone. I think it's really gone." Dana nodded, though her face was pale. "For now. But you need to leave this house. You were the key. You opened the lock. You don't want to stay here in case it finds another door." Emma and Jake didn't argue. They packed what little they had, loaded up the car, and drove away before sunrise. As they left Grayson Lane behind, Emma looked back at the house once, just once. And in the window of the hidden room she thought she saw a face. Small. Pale. Watching. 6 months later. The house on Grayson Lane still stands. Emma and Jake now live in a modest townhouse 2 states away. They never talk about the house, not in full. Occasionally, it slips into their dreams or their conversations in the quiet hours of the night, but mostly it lingers like a bruise beneath the skin. Present but hidden. Jake started therapy. He doesn't remember everything, but he remembers enough. The cold. The voices. The feeling that something else was in control of his body, his thoughts. He's learning to separate what was him from what was it. Emma, on the other hand, has become obsessed with understanding. She's read every book she can on ancestral hauntings, generational trauma, and possession. She even spoke once with a folklore professor who listened carefully and said places can remember things, especially things that end in blood. But she didn't tell him everything. No one would believe it all. She never told him that sometimes when Jake's sleeping, he whispers in that same layered voice just for a second before going silent again. Or that once she found a drawing taped to their bedroom wall, a crude stick figure with an X over the face. Jake swore he didn't do it. Back in Grayson Lane, the house remains empty. The real estate company gave up trying to sell it. The last buyer who toured it left halfway through the showing, pale and shaking, muttering something about hearing a child call his name. No one goes near the place anymore, not even kids on dares. The windows are always closed. The grass is always just slightly too long. And if you walk by at night, locals say you can hear things. Tapping, scratching, sometimes laughter. The town made an unofficial rule to leave the house alone. The local council even discussed demolition once, but nothing ever came of it. The demolition crew that came to survey the place had their equipment fail. One worker fell off a ladder and broke his leg. He later told his wife he'd felt something shove him. Something small, cold. One night, a curious young man named Logan, a YouTuber known for exploring haunted places, decided to film inside the house. His channel had millions of subscribers, and he was chasing viral content. He broke in through the back door and started filming. Abandoned house, Grayson Lane, real haunted room, the title card read. He walked through the dusty halls, narrating dramatically until he found the hidden door. Remarkably, it was open as if waiting. "I can't believe this," he whispered into the camera. "This is where it happened. The Wexley kid. The possession stuff. This is it." He stepped into the hidden room. The footage showed nothing unusual for the first minute, just darkness, old furniture, and dust motes swirling in flashlight beams. Then the light flickered. The camera jerked. And then static. That was the last anyone saw of Logan. His camera was found on the sidewalk outside the house 2 days later. The battery was melted from the inside. Authorities searched the house. No sign of him. His last recording, the one before the static, ends with a single whisper caught faintly on the mic, "Welcome back." Jake and Emma saw the news on a random scroll through social media. Emma didn't want to watch the footage. Jake did. He watched the clip 3 times before quietly closing the laptop. He didn't say anything for a long time. Finally, He looked at her and said, "It's not done." Emma nodded slowly. "I think it's the house," she said. "Not just what was inside. The house itself remembers. It wants to be filled." Jake looked away. "Then someone else will eventually go back. And somewhere, far away, on a cold night, the house waits, patient as ever. There's a room behind the wall, and it's always listening." 45.